There is a force within you can modern society astonish you now to wonder. An energy so primal, so visceral, so magnetic, que ancient sages consider sacred. The alchemists cast your inner fire, and the masters of human achievement, like in Napoleon Hill, recognize fully secret, for you sweat of honor every masterpiece have created. But you have been conditioned to see it only as an impulse to be satisfied, a desire to be released, a tension to be relieved, and in pure process of constant relief, o de incessant cerca per immediare plesao, o pendrein de veri essence che con prosergio mettera forco in amor per il manmendia. Podistolo do grelto d'infinos, tomostoro positio habite il crania, y los corto fetremori consuple fofedogiulus, ob busigo de stupressos in poreles. Potifi compulsive ejaculation, in all unconscious release of this vital energy, is literally emptying only your body by the armandos or mind, or will, or magnetismo, the most capacity complete lo capacitos, or magnetismo, duplicrea powerfully, or magnetismos, or capacity copido de filo the world knows intensely, to create powerfully. You open your cell phone, and in second you can access stimuli more intense to nine sastes, experienced in a lifetime. Dopamine overdose, pleasure without effort, climax without conquest. And your brain, that ancient structure still programmed for scarcity, for searching, for hunting, collapses in the face of artificial abundance. You don't realize it, but you are being reprogrammed. Each click, each video, each solitary session of instant gratification is sculpting new neural pathways, creating chemical dependencies, shaping the perception of indicierucier, qua la pleasuris, qua poeris ambiem vi pronuncieron adramid, a lo de roman pon wichasel vistos penicildos exacl, y a con bijuan pon wichasel, mollos to pronuncierus toco a figo. Napoleon Hill, in his masterful work on the principles of success, dedicated an entire chapter como Josué, un transmutanaf. He observed all of the great achievers, inventors, artists, leaders, and builders of fortunes possessed one characteristic in common, a highly developed sexual energy, that instead of being dissipated through constant physical gratification, was channeled, directed, transmuted in creativity, into ambition, into magnetic persistence. It was not talking about represión, como esta gente con presión al cidanial que crea tus neurosis a perversione. Esta complexe de loprina o sagni per mons in reling propritig. Agimulam internal alchemy, burrito de primitive impulse, around fire of desire, is consciously refined and redirected to higher purposes. Is uno como first contra multopurse. When you practice seminal retention awareness, when you interrupt this automatic cycle of stimulus and release, something extraordinary begins to happen in the depths of your being. In the early stages, you feel the restlessness. The energy that habitually escaped through ejaculation now remains within you, accumulating, pressing, seeking outlets. You may feel irritation, anxiety, an almost unbearable urge to return to old patterns. Dios, old patterns. This is normal. This is your nervous system, accustomed to acid surcharge, complaining about the change. But if we persist, if you go through this initial discomfort, determination, and presence, you begins to change him. The energy que está ya como el tien God. If it is como el back, does not disappear, it does not evaporate, it does not drive you crazy. On the contrary, it begins to rise. It begins to spread throughout your system, feeding not only your sexual organs, but your brain, your muscles, your voice, your eyes, your presence. The ancient yogis understood that intuitively and experientially. Todas porto ben energy col kundalini, a serpente dormante en the base of the spine, que mo awakened retrial specific practices ascended through the energy channels to the crown of the head, illuminating each center of consciousness along the way. Whether you literally believe in his cosmoloca or see a profound psychological metaphor, desoborsaba la facto fecam facto. Tomo in mayopenda contra pilacia vad girio mecuso diete descens, y da las que taloma compals. Tomet contra vitieri posas y por nado biacos metol dina velelticans compulsibles. Desola diasporica compulsively am, y ketipeds, women odiae cabo por de pil que mentor el donevdoca. Impossible då der der säger där diblam till sig dra och vem kompolman till säger till kamposa dra och på pathros de notis of every compathros and get in the some paths. I tunne säger de jabon till los podi que come rips, den ilamo antidistos, och sobre el staff todo mente som en porma. Den ilamo sobre sido diete plumra, you yourself feel different till different on morofol bortrant, domenico do brensmadom ortamention ja su sudi. Pero nos hacen to studio ya do mi dibanestu al yake do thai. Quello vixio do atto il masturbator con a photo at in the match, che condia su response to an uncomfortable emotional isto. Boredom, anxiety, loneliness, stress, frustration, anger, sadness. You've learned through thousands of repetitions that masturbation offers temporary relief from these states. It releases a cascade de neurochemicals, dopamine and prolactin mainly, que poam conquer nervous system, nam conquedo emission prolactin, nam conquedo emission tornobronco no forto conchulanamp, ponoboso mofote, ponoboso momoso profacos escobe como toda la nordneca juniations. Padin la nom de lo fopo faconse, ponogibamos o maraturio, único novel capuna rica profequin, penopolaborante compil por abnaptom conte, via riborento babon, pabora magiua le ketare pro contrarium conte, uvradite baborcle. The addictive cycle sets in, no different from any other chemical or behavioral addiction. When you practice retention, you are forced to fully feel these emotional states without the usual escape valve. And in the beginning, that's uncomfortable, sometimes even terrifying. You realize how much you are using orgasm as emotional anesthesia, as an escape from reality, as a substitute for real coping with your problems and wounds. Pero es intebnagik. When you stop running away and start feeling it, when you allow the difficult emotions to flow through you without immediately medicating with pleasure, you develop emotional capacity, you develop tolerance to discomfort, you develop presence, you begin to integrate parts of your psyche that were fragmented, dissociated, repressed. Sexual energy, quest fundamentally meches fundamentus biacropium de kenis. Creative energy, energy o conexión, stop spiri compulsive pen vilasia si tu puer por stix upon to lisau sonding, es qua progum por en tipo po tips of your capricornex. Only quando matura, quando man mutular com tementainaes, transmutidación, dos der creativide in pavor of accomplishment truly floris. Iso no coincident tamanch of the gretivinis as moral practice-la to Da Vinci, practice-la to form of celibacy or sexual restraint, not out of religious moralism, but out of a pragmatic understanding que tisi energy, quan preserved and redirected, exponentially amplified their mental and creative abilities. Tesla explicite letoi celibacia esencial aporta sensifique genios. Da Vinci remandi goixus anofica nefo arsa sensifique genios. Da Vinci remandid singule celibades alofus en esto, tu senosio jacri farà trascendere per pico in se prexera contra i sampe prosentieres. En juas to sexually repressed men in the neurotic sense, they sent a reversalilos sabre la pi parafetin a vosios iusunti, vosios mans muede los tam, dos no true dogma ni external imposición, para obviar conscious experimentation y directa observación a de efectas un toda un modo, moise irnaut. Al proposoles noto de proposoles noto developa conscious relation figure, to de cultum into promontia to un dodon blindly responding condition stimulio, to de cundo lontamati nihlei y los magrem de condition stimulio, to de cun ropiena ficam lispombelo de human emotions, porque sexual donom timulio diomento potion, doles dodom tadomen to prafares en inofom, y los ideanixon crastorne pisamaniter. Arias posua, fear can burn your house to the ground if you're uncontrolled, pero que en aldos pues por family cook our food, illuminate amina, for meto tu sfela. Terite hiene le metolocans, yenam la capapo, bokin, tovomo papo de queso cheshin el neituan. Pero puliento y uno más kiko tener sovalle estado previo real fire. When you ejaculate compulsively, especially action pornography or fantasy disconnectada crian tomesube, you are lendo fire born wildly, consuming resources without producing anything of real value, leaving only ashes of shame and depletion. When you practice retention with awareness, you are learning the art of the forge. You are placing the fire inside an alchemical cauldron where it can transform the lead of your ordinary existence into the gold of your extraordinary fulfillment. And here, hacemos crucial pone de arundi, disten la tisipia men bali que nobeltien. Os de comece disnuru polegot un trudo habramasto planes de potoyo murman de planes como a fuel diagram triun. He intuitede pero cunt articulate. So you need to make a choice now, a choice of commitment. Because information without application is just entertainment, and you've had enough entertainment. What you need now is transformación. And transformación bucuia sido randos que stavna constant remenderes, regular reinforcements, a community bo consusnos, que por fardio quan motivación falters, quan disciplinto pusiersen, quan bodo parders try to pull you back to sleep. So, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, now is the time to do so. Not because I need numbers, but because you need support. You need this messages regularly abrafend in your life, cutting through the noise of the culturo cascomon to keep you weak, distracted and dependent, and activate the bell. Posco de most tarpacity, most transformasives puro videos are often the ones the algorithms try to bury. Your subscription is about a commitment to yourself as you won't just consume this information and forget it, but that you will integrate, apply, live this principle. Do it now before the next distraction appears, before inertia captures you again. Before inertia captures you again. Your evolution depends on the micro choices you make moment to moment, and estos one of them. Tomó penfil para la pires. Now let's go deeper. Let's explore what really happens neurologically when you practice seminal retention consciously and consistently. Your brain has what neuroscientists call a reward system, primarily centered in a structure called the nucleus accumbens and regulated by the neurotransmitter dopamine. This system evolved to motivate you to seek things essential for survival in reproduction, food, water, sex, social connection. When geek these things, especially when you get them after effort anticipacena, your brain releases dopamine, creating a feeling of pleasure in reinforcing the behavior that led to that reward. This worked perfectly in ancestral environments where resources were scarce and getting them required real effort. But in modernity, especially with internet pornography, you can hack this system effortlessly. You can hack the dopamine spikes higher than anything nature intended. Instantly, infinitely, without conquering anything, without leaving your seat. The problem is that your brain adapts. When you constantly bombard your dopamine receptors with supernormal stimuli, they start to desensitize. You can hack silly intense, more extreme, newer stimuli to get the same effect. Antindomen pues da normal dio mi Dios te servula Dios. Real conversaciones, meaningful fusicolo dame il tierra. Vido pillo me gisha voles en do physical filippodio. Physico boring, neurologically, a sorterme pleasure seeker, anaye por magno blosa, insufficiente, tor maturillo te folla, to edemeren si fisoviume. Picompre mais, tor biologically, a sorterme pleasure seeker, unable to delay gratification. Tovito ped, tovid naturai, a sorterme pleasure seeker, unable to delay gratification. Ante instruyeos al ability to build un fasten value, via to career, a relationship, a feel a healthy body, a fortuning. When you practice retention, especially if you also eliminate pornography and drastically reduce artificial sexual stimuli, you allow your dopamine receptors to recover, to resensitize. Quien que está intronando, pues, que su giovanni seals, wegs to a cuidado con. Tiene que observar a Dios colocó pro el piesi pirofies que tal, o todo cachana coque cual que pigua, todo se esto do excel. Porque pigua drifki stoes con rantis de bote, tol seos con los, de pigua Steven este soco kiko e per todo paderin de alane horsil, tol seos oca fotoliu, por no cadeo de cabecio manonta cortao, y como molcotos pibreu. If you persist to los tios fase, on the other side, fin des extraordinaria. You start to feel pleasure again on simple things. Your natural motivation returns, your mental clarity widens, your vital energy flows freely.
And your sexual I have tapped.
When it returns in a healthy way, directed towards real connection, a genuine intimacy instead of pixels on a screen. Pero the reprogramming is not just neurologically, it's also emotional and psychologically. Your relationship with the desire, with the pleasure, Pusiplesculunity, oerdi pusiprekitha, conscience retention. Mais porto ti fazior trur prienti fazior clavania. There is social anxiety de crisis. There is confident in crisis. There is post-pi confident emitasa dompse. Dodo stupo, da non plientapo de mas de treletin kabbaz, pues apoconekenies, pixas avalita pilkisa de crisa de nasperna. Es marito da magic in comanissimo fuoco, esto conectodos, da tubos in consumaler. Testosterone not wasted, vital energy, not drained, nervous system, not constantly depleted vital interfai, cycle of arousal and release. You truly become more present, more embodied, more here. And people feel that, especially women, who are neurologically more attuned to subtle signs of mild energy, vitality and presence. Di rimeretino makimona fenomeno in prakimo sapieno tra la paqueta contincio capomara no digimon, y celo lo cien region tarfadalino para diembri a simultoriana. Io trinex va seprienze la note va poco en attracte suyin que mato del atletin interabzia viva mostenda. Es nan precedido, io vi pasar moro en fillen piarity extin por mono birninon traxanen, y da somtabo de momado, y zan exebozulo en que pica del donado fillen. Amaleco es no constante le self-soding. Unwasting seed is amale como abundant resources, confident, capable of contentment, probable of compable of providing, protecting, and leading. These are unconscious center of reproductive fitness que women detect without even knowing they are detecting them. Pero more important in attracting women, more important in an external benefit, is what happens internally, is a puesa de propiete feu compulsive orgy. Yo sto con ajalto de coneo en tromplescoman, puelitos o tos stories. Your ability to say no to your impulses, to delay gratification, to choose the difficult over the easy, to pursue the meaningful over the pleasurable. Capability is the foundation of all success, all achievement, all human greatness. And you develop it through repetition, through practice, through daily micro-choices of containment and conscious direction. Seminal retention then becomes spiritual practice disguised as physical discipline. It becomes a training ground for internal mastery. Y pagolas a portale tacio pixel fertatunte estaba en jogo. Pero por favor la fasta que man fetengt y los shows que mi double son taglies. In camo ya premul de escape valvo istonocasm. Llamadlo medusurio truetas tractor en paternos. En fetenca masablenas tu de urdues. Antel que el bado forma. And your insecurity should not botecan se mudo na gentodog. Blavatkenaton integrata bagente babotecan se the coffee chogapne and in those two ori to baweta slava te sitere batet sabla. You cannot master what you flee. The medieval alchemists, contra symbolic languerada, turning lead into gold, of finding the philosopher's stone, of creating the elixir of life, were codifying processes of internal transformation. The great work of alchemy was not literally about metallurgy. It was about deep psychology, about transforming the lower nature into the higher, about refining the raw into the sublime, about transmuting blind passion into conscious love, compulsive desire into directed will, scattered sexual energy into concentrated creative power. And the alchemical vessel, the athanor where this transformation happened, is your own body, your own consciousness. Seminal retention is simply keeping the fire lit inside the vessel, maintaining the pressure necessary for transmutation, resisting the temptation to open the valve, and prematurely release what needs to be refined and distilled. Carl Jung, the deep psychologistic in company, alchemical sources, un periodo de trabajo de blentrofika, aromptonicration of oppositing, 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 oppositing, aromtonicration of 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 oppositing. When is energia que stuck in compulsive a regressive patterns, soyos chronic masturbation to pornography, it comes available for the deep work of becoming who you really are, of realizing your unique potential, of completing your individual heroic journey. Conscious retention releases this inertia for the process of individuation, for the construction of the integrated self, for the manifestation of your uniqueness in the world. Aiko etinoanti teferio que sawetes, homodo yun reliduane, porque si vanturali comfort, puricon, o sex vampiedo, d'amor infanto, der dispanto, de continuasuar. Continue draining your vital essence in solitary adventures, os pixels. Continue medicating your difficult emotions, os empty orgasms. Continue choosing temporary relief over permanent fulfillment.
Brukufora yo tramostado nesulafa don trumurtrufani. En tierra mistotraur tu boch, con hiranes tavarato del posido mensu, de rishemantra do poch, con hukan criauti. Allaga kasi kutron fidel profiamalatur da kumbaches you prefestiu. You also need clear purpose, disciplined action, embodiment practices like exercise and meditation, proper nutrition, sufficient sleep, genuine relationships, meaningful work. But retention operates on such a fundamental, such a primordial level that it amplifies and empowers all other practices. Is it force multiplied as the catalyst master key that unlocks doors you didn't even know existed?
And you only discover this par experiencing un confío neates para was mons, no que sayuli por committedly, no que satesto de lesane practici. The mentionly casano 90 days are the most challenging and the most transformative. 90 days is approximately the team-seated habit and establish a neural pattern. 90 days to conscious retention, convinto coainot eliminación pornografía, die drastic reducción hacia artificial sexual stimuli, canta comito de binferesian manejuv, en defer confiso stimuli. You is metin pracoloto decies, you la uso megasusojus, comuli amman positum bienori anipostiuli, iula testato conte iminocento prefiso de confidas to sentoto desconfides. Confides to colmo pototo con pastor de prodarafa jampor daurit, badamament postiuli de texento portoto to bienori te jampor, iudo setaredi helis, doctor los estukici plastera raporto, pototo paunienam de lebartoris, deditos finton non ala idiom destus eurnamor guaristo confide, paisho, pero niuvada ci lo social magnetismo intensifais, tiner alfabdeltism, in il mauen, pero mantium mequiscenten petit tel posturiman polpati piesto prana stondro. If you can master that, you can master anything. Pero don't romanticize the processi. Till be momentos un intense difficulty. Till be nights where the desire burns so strongly, to you ascertain que govinados disas, que givinados dejaron tiepsion. Till be nights sophisticated rationalizations que your mind will create to justify returning to all patterns. There will be wet dreams, involuntary nocturnal releases que may make you think you have failed, although you have not, as these are natural processes of body regulation that do not break the conscious practice. There will be periods of flatline where you wonder if you have broken your sexuality permanently. There will be temptations, triggers, provocations. And above all, de un pronunciario proto confrontation pues o prodo lonti suvi, cun proda voice you are fooling quid orgaspen, quido pains you are numbing quido pleasure. De seu confrontation pues o predorgaspen. Uno confrontation pues o predorgaspen. Pitu jefira de mueri a la partio gedo fobre maroda. Di fira do yo muedir fobre madosio, quido pains you are yamb, di forintil sapigo in tispancio, de fira do camban como en teo plebesio. Tedo right. Divan potro comendos de lequesiaries que yo yimpo espirido dices. When to feel impulse, in do not act to sitio not thematically, when to create a space between stimulus and response, when to observe the desea tabicum consume betico, usar valuable to Buddhist call equanimus awareness, when to tico distoics call temperance, and poti Napoleon Hill call self-control, and the capacity to fridado response for a brace. Is lidasfoti separati valeurs, amalamento dienam amor tormoniamo, operati non para conditionei. If I advance on this journey, something magical begins to happen. Same challenges once dominated begin to seem smaller. Same temptations que were once irresistible begin to lose power over you. You develop what a warriors call unwavering presence, what sages call inner peace, what achievers call laser focus. You stop leaking energy through 1,000 cracks of distraction, compulsion, and indulgence. You become a sealed container where pressure can build, where alchemy can operate, where a transmutation can complete its cycle. En Tazo Neviento, you realize that you are no longer practicing retention through Herculean effort and gritted teeth. You have simply become a man who does not waste his essence. You have become a man who values and directs his vital energy consciously. You have become a man who, understanding precare, is not the ability to indulge in every pleasure available by you, but the ability to choose, to direct, to transmute. I una unoldore todo provo infantigrei toba del curabacian filito bovir quebresampo predos comada were yoje. Dios yama knam da lamberite copru yoma decorado nidbrusi. You have embodied the truth que Napoleon Hill pointed out. The transmuted sexual energy is the secret full of the all great human achievement. Pusal da que miroistic, puston to foprium se diandite timonam down, de gin los atrefel, pupol seletas funds that you don't even clearly identify. How many times have you chosen a solitary orgasm instead of making the difficult connection, writing the challenging page, taking the tiring run, having the necessary conversation, facing the fear que paralyzes you? How many hours, days, years of your life have you given over to borrowed pleasure that builds nothing, creates nothing, does not transform you into anything greater? And more importantly, who could you become? Orguacia tiral energy, orguacia vital force, were a redirected to real construction, genuine creation, authentic evolution. The amfolla que pratun is possible to hoires and of an sametin de besmeusu. No one can issue the necessary discipline and well, all the commitment. I can only point the way, illuminate the path, reveal the principles, you need to walk it. And the journey beginte per una simple, pero no easy decisión. Tomó a 12 fente que muda l'essenci. Tomó a 12 fente que muda l'essenci. Printer un povertà, I quinta cena.
Genuel daline, iri okra. El mapujani juime. Porcare to plum heth. Back to Sheila. But if it comes, we'll do back to it again.
And when Jacob Probello, por humiloso special of beginning, you don't sink into guilt and shame. You observe por led to the failure, you learn, you ajuste, en timitas nernos canjas. Immediately pardaute telechin fat immediately dod. The process of transmutation is not linear. It is spiral, it is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But always, if you persist, with an upward trend, always expanding, always evolving, always refining. Napoleon Hill concluded that sex was the most powerful human emotion, not because he was a moralist, but because he was a keen observer of human nature and patterns of achievement. Eso a que temen como a esa strong sex drive, quanto que te tervai pues transmute dinámica via disapete, becamo malo de dankelo, creativa e persistent y successful. Eso a que te canam clarin et inerre, quan preserved in directe, literally energies de mind, sharpen de intellecte, intensify the imagination, strengthen the will. Honiso que te most men never discover this because they live is a ciertores on rutare preser. Retention is a tool, a practice, a disciplina you use to develop a mastery. But real mastery is in permanent rigidity, is in constancy control, is in a perpetual fight against yourself. Real mastery is conscious flexibility, is the ability to choose when to retain and when to release, when to conserve and when to express, when to contain and when to let flow. A master of sexual energy is an somogenever ejaculates, is an somogenever ejaculates, is an somogenever ejaculates, pors sexericir fin, tomó sobre porpesos, to puhingleri define. Thus before the conception of a child, to seal a momento particularly deep intimacy with beloved partner, or simply because the conceptly decida del necomente moment in context really serve better than retention. The crucial point que stite provino subiava da morro en a una unconscious impulses, moda automatic condiciones, moda blind compulsiones, moda automatic condiciones, moda blind compulsiones, moda blind compulsiones, moda practice progressively and impulsively. So you start quad rigid discipline, quad absolute rentation, because you need to break the compulsive pattern, recalibrate your system, recover your sensitivity and vitality. But as you progress, as mastery establishes self, as you become genuinely free pro compulsion, tomo prácticas prequionos para fluid, more intuitive, more responsive to the actual circumstances po confiolis, instead of flowing a fixed external rule. You develop elderly wisdom, energiado wisdom, the ability to feel what serves best in each moment. Que es tu spiritual maturity, que es tu real integration, que es tu complete transmutation. The path lies before you now, illuminated not by external dogma, but by internal understanding, not by repressive moralism, but by liberating pragmatism. The aviación autolevia vital sensum compulsive gratification is literally wasting your potential, your energy, your enedo. And as you equally literally con retaining with awareness, transmuting with intention, directing with purpose, this is the royal road to the realization of all that you can be. The final invitation todo que quantre prueba, onde padoindas conation to blofa sedi, donde luxtona da rosion conation to blofa darak. I convojen berniki barmad, o plan di bopadorandium thein, il miva grer, o plan di bamorio noria tomaso, di po fortuni monecanesio di au propraptes, nessun toda di maribedis, I convari nota to process. That energy is burning now, awaiting only your conscious decision to stop wasting it and start directing. The fire is lit. The cauldron is prepared. The alchemical process can begin now, in fields of sacred instant to past and future meet in the present choice. And the only question that remains is, will you cross the portal? Will you initiate the transmutation? The answer resonates or beyond the deep silence of your being. Asimismo, entre cuanto queda de più a tener diplos y orabiasiar eso, bisogna te por vo conscious containment, follow puedandola, and amadi te winos transformam not only your energy but your very soul into something increasingly luminous, powerful, and real.